Hello there guys, I am your host Bobby L, and I am back with another video. So for today's video, this lore topic will be discussing the societal and social structures of the giants. So for context, there are two races that live in the world of Lineaos. We have the Parallelians and the giants. Both of them are related to one another. In a future video, we are going to address the societal structure of the Parallelians, which is a hive society, similar to ants and bees. But for today's video, we are going to discuss the society of the giants. Now, the society that the giants adopt is one that we're all too well familiar with if we've taken history class in school. I don't know, maybe elementary, middle school, or high school, or college. But we're all too well familiar with this model, and that is feudalism. Yes, the feudalism of farmers, aristocrats, and kings. So, for today's video, we're going to discuss the feudalism that the giants adopt, and we're going to also learn a bit about medieval feudalism and how it compares and contrasts to the feudalism adopted by the giants. We will also look at characters among the giants and where they stand within their feudalism hierarchy. So without further ado, let's talk about feudalism. So, what exactly is feudalism? Well, feudalism was a societal structure that was very common throughout the Middle Ages, especially within Europe. And it basically divided citizens up into different classes. You know, the poorer classes would be at the bottom, and as you went up, more wealth and power was gained. So pictured here is basically a pyramid showing the basic classes that would have made up a standard medieval society, and who had more power and who had less power. So let's do a quick walkthrough of these medieval classes. So first up, you had, of course, your serfs and your farmers at the very bottom. Then you had your knights and vassals. You then had your rich people and nobles. And of course, you had your royalty, your kings and queens. But not even they had the most power. For at the tippy top of medieval feudalism was the papacy and the clergy, the church. But yeah, that is a basic run-through of medieval feudalism. So now that you know what medieval feudalism was like, let's now explore the feudalism adopted by the giants of Lineaos. So this is a custom hierarchy pyramid that I created for this video, illustrating the different classes of giant feudalism. And as you can tell, it's much more basic than the pyramid of medieval feudalism, which I showed you previously. So, the feudalism of the giants is divided up into three classes. So at the very bottom, we have the common folk, we have nobility in the middle, and royals at the top. So let me discuss these classes in detail. So, common folk. They are people like us, everyday people working our average jobs. Up here, we have nobility, which consists of primarily wealthy giants, but they also tend to work for the government and for the royal people, so they have direct connections to royals. And at the tippy top, we have royalty, which consists of your rulers, like your emperors, your kings, and princesses alike. But the society adopted by the giants might seem a bit similar to the Middle Ages, but it's quite different. For example, the common folk down here are not poor. They're basically like average citizens, consisting of mainly your poor and your middle class. Also, unlike the Middle Ages, no one is a serf, no one's a slave. No one is bound to land by nobles. Everybody has the same rights. So that would mean that the royals, the nobles, and the common folk all have the same freedoms and privileges. They're all equal if you think about it. Like, think of modern society. Another key difference is with nobility. Just because a giant is a noble doesn't really mean that they're wealthy. Like I said earlier, nobles in giant society can be wealthy, but they have direct connections to royalty. So if you work under the king or queen, you are a noble. But that does not mean you have a lot of money. No, it doesn't. Everybody, is equal in this society. Not with money, obviously, and power, but everyone has the same rights. Also in giant society, not all nobles are corrupt and greedy. Now in the Middle Ages, this was commonplace. Like, nobles bound peasants to land and probably abused them and hurt them and kept them as slaves. Which this does happen in giant society. Like, there are nobles, as you'll see later on, that are corrupt and greedy, with their souls and hearts corrupted by avarice. During the Middle Ages, feudalism might have been commonplace, but it wasn't the hype back then. For throughout history, peasants and the lower peoples would revolt against nobles and royals. They wanted more food and liberty and power. They wanted everybody to be equal. But yeah, guys, this is the feudalism of the giants. And it's quite different than that of the Middle Ages, but it does have some similarities. But the only true difference among classes is power and position. For example, nobles have more power than the common folk. And royalty trumps it all. They have more power than the nobles and the common folk combined. But this is to be expected because they're royalty, They're government figures. They're the kings. But today, we're also going to look into characters right now. We're going to look into some of the characters that make up the giant species, and we're going to talk about their place among the ranks of their feudalism. So without further ado, let's meet some of these characters. So before I introduce you to these two guys, I just want to say that typically among nobility and royalty, giants tend to have more brighter feathers, elaborate quills and headdresses and ornaments, and tend to carry around scepters. So to the left here, we have Constantine, who is the ruler of the country of Anatolia. So he is royalty. He's an emperor. Down here, kneeling to him, is Ellipsis, who is his advisor, servant, and his servant. Due to him having direct connections to his ruler, he is a noble. And as you can tell, he doesn't really have a staff. Because just because you're a noble does not mean you have to have a staff. Alright, it's just status. It doesn't matter. Up next, we have these two gentlemen here. So to the right, we have Avaricius. Avaricius is a noble from the country of Prismedia, and his heart is corrupted by avarice. He is corrupt, and he is tyrannical, and he is a psychopath. And you can tell this because he has a whip in his hand. And this is because in the country of Prismedia, Parallelians, the smaller cousin of the giant, are kept as slaves. So Avaricius is not a giant you want to run into. To the left here, we have Croesus, another miser, corrupted by wealth. He is from the island of Prefima, off the coast of Prismidia. He himself also has slaves that are Parallelian, and he himself is greedy. And this is this is a direct tie to the Middle Ages, how there were corrupt nobles and aristocrats. And these two are like that. And it just goes to show how wealth doesn't always bring prosperity and goodness. Sometimes it corrupts you and makes you do very horrible things. So yeah, these guys are both corrupted by wealth and greed. And they're a direct consequence of that. Up next, we have Hermes. Hermes is a member of Constantine's court, similar to Ellipsis. He is Constantine's personal physician, and he's also known as the royal alchemist. Basically, he's a scientist. And of course, due to him having ties to the king, he is a noble. So, right here we have two other fine gentlemen. To the left, we have Thyarsis, with his nickname being the Drunk. Thyarsis is a former member of Constantine's court. He was both a philosopher, bard, and poet. And he was a noble. However, due to bad habits and bad conduct and behavior, Thyarsis was exiled from the castle for life and forced to live among the common folk. And I think, judging by his nickname and the various jugs of wine and alcohol he has, you can tell why he was kicked out. So, he's no longer a noble. So his scepter here means nothing. Just because you have a scepter does not mean anything. Like I said earlier, the true differentiation is within power and position, and that can be lost due to misconduct. So Thyarsis lost his nobility because of his habits, and he will never regain that again. So to the right, we have another giant, whose name is Antaeus, the fighter. He is from the country of Eremos, and he represents one of the commoners. He is just like you and I, and has no ties to royalty whatsoever. So yes, feudalism. A time of princesses, nobles, kings, vassals, knights, and royalty has long since gone by. But feudalism is the normal way of life for the giants of Lineaos, at least in a very different sense. So there you have it, guys, the societal structure of the giants. Feudalism, as you can tell, is quite different than the feudalism of the Middle Ages. The giants' style of feudalism is a bit different. You see, the only true difference is with power and position. But besides that, everybody is equal, and most of them get along. Similar to today's society. Even though we don't have feudalism, but you kind of get what I mean. You know, equality for all. But that is all for today's video. If you liked this content, I consider you to like, comment, and subscribe for more content. If you enjoyed this world building project, please consider visiting my website in the description below. I also have an article discussing the feudalism of the giants too, which you can also find in the description. I hope you all enjoyed this video and learned something new. And I hope to see you in the next one, so stay tuned for more content relating to this world building project, for it is getting very interesting. Have a nice day, and stay safe and well. Bye!